Hello, I'm often asked, what's the best version of the Bible? And why are there so many versions anyway? Well, what's the best version depends on what you mean, because the different creators of the versions had different goals in mind. Some were more concerned with a literal translation, having a word for word translation from the original source, and others were more concerned with being easy to understand, so translating into more modern English and not being so careful to keep the original wording of the original author. Another difference is gender inclusion, where the original text may have said brothers, modern versions will say brothers and sisters. Another difference is whether they are created from the original text, original Aramaic, Greek, and Hebrew, or whether they borrow from existing translations. And then you may see some that have missing verses. For example, the NIV doesn't have all of the verses that are in the King James Version. And that's because none of the versions were created from the original sources. We don't have the original sources. We're creating from copies of copies and copies. And we found in Dead Sea Scrolls, Nag Hammadi find, we found older versions of some of the books than we previously had. And so the thought being that these older versions were more accurate. And the older versions didn't have some of the verses that were in the pre-existing versions, and therefore some versions have taken them out, thinking that they were added on later by the translator. So which version should you use? I would say if you're studying the Bible or trying to be a scholar, you'd want to use a more literal version. And if you're a new reader, you want to use a more easy to read version. So some of the literal versions, the NASB is the most literal, the most word for word version of the Bible. The King James is a word for word translation of the Bible. The King James is sort of the OG of Bibles, and a lot of churches, a lot of Christians believe that that's the only Bible to use. And it's also known for its literary beauty, as is the RSV. The ESV is a literal translation as well, and it's preferred by a lot of Bible schools and Bible scholars. Then there's the New King versions that say the most easy to read of the literal versions. Of the easy to read translations, the NIV is the most literal of the easy to read. So it's sort of the middle ground, and that's why it's the most popular version today of the Bible. Then some of the other easy to read versions, the more easy to read, are the New Living Translation, the Message, and the Amplified version. So those are some of the versions and some of the reasons why you'd use some of the different versions. So I hope that helps you.